The 2019 Game Award nominations have been revealed, and this year we saw a lot of nominations for Death Stranding.
Could there be a controversy?
Hot take. Game Awards. A lot of people are talking about this, folks, because a lot of gamers seem to be a little nervous. If you don't know what the Game Awards are, they are a yearly event that is hosted and created by Jeff Keighley. Now, Jeff Keighley has a long-standing relationship with a lot of game developers, having been a journalist in the industry for a very long time. But most recently, well, he appeared in a game with Hideo Kojima, Kojima's game, Death Stranding, as a character in the game. And, well, in the Game Awards, Death Stranding got nominated for, I think, most of the categories?
A lot of categories. I think it's around eight or nine out of the 30 categories Death Stranding is showing up. It is the most nominated game. And the reason people are talking about this is because, I mean, let's be honest, Jeff Keighley has been pretty much promoting Death Stranding since the foundation of the Game Awards over the last 5 years. So the Game Awards have been around for about 5 years. And Death Stranding, Jeff Keighley, Kojima, that's been like the trifecta around the Game Awards. You couldn't talk about one without talking about the others. So now to see that this game is out and it's being nominated in so many categories, it's got people going, what's going on here? Like, Jeff is clearly pulling some strings in the back and getting his boy to win the game here.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're thinking, oh, well, he didn't get nominated for every category, there's actually like half of the categories for esports. So if Death Stranding started getting nominated for esports categories, then something was clearly wrong. But
Best Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Death Stranding.
It would have been a little bit weird.
Yes.
But what's going on right now is that essentially a lot of people out there are seeing this connection and are kind of worried. But the connection goes even deeper because Kojima himself is actually one of the chairmen of the Game Awards event itself.
Yeah, well, he's on the panel. But then we looked into how are nominees actually selected.
Yeah.
And this is what, I mean, they share with us. So that's what we have to take at face value. Basically, about 80 media outlets from around the world get a ballot. They get to put 5 of their games on there for each category. So we have about 30 categories. That all gets sent in confidentially, gets tallied, and that's how nominees are selected. So myself, I don't think there's any wrongdoing here. I think that this is just legit. But what's worth talking about is the optics here. No matter how much you say, there's nothing rigged, it's honest, the optics are so bad, which makes you have to talk about, like, should the host of the Game Awards or the owner or the producer, Jeff has a lot of hats for this thing. Should he be involved at all in marketing another game like Death Stranding? Because he chose, and look, I get it. Jeff started this thing from literally nothing. I think he put his own money into this. He built it from nothing. Now it's gaining some momentum. It's gaining some respect. It had a little bit of growth pains. But now, if you looked at last year, it was a pretty good show. There's some decent reveals. It's a fun show to watch. Yes. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
This year, it kind of took a step back and, Jeff, what are you doing? He's in Death Stranding. He's always with Kojima tweeting like, I'm with my friend Kojima. It's just too close and it looks bad. And at one point, Jeff should have either said, look, I'm going to detach myself from Death Stranding, or put in another host or something, because right now, how's anybody going to take this seriously? It just looks too weird.
It does. I think for a lot of people out there that don't understand how award shows work, it can be a little bit confusing. Now, to understand who's actually voting for these things, all you need to do is take a look at their website and just see what they've said. And the voting majority of these awards are journalists and reviewers already cemented in the industry. Now, it's not folks like YouTubers like us, although there's a couple people out there that have actually been in there. It's more or less people like IGN, GameSpot, the people you've heard about reviewing games for big publishers or publications.
Yeah.
That seems to be where a lot of these votes are coming in. Now, something to keep in mind, many of these outlets gave positive reviews to Death Stranding. Even if in the review they said they didn't like the game, they said that they liked the game enough to get a good number. I don't agree with that whole thing, but that's why this game has been nominated for so many categories. And I have played it. I'm not a fan. You've played it. You like it a bit more.
I enjoy it, and I want to spend more time with it. But I'm busy with Jedi Fallen Order right now.
And some of the categories I saw got nominated for, I completely agree with. Yep. Art style and stuff like that make a lot of sense. Narrative, sure. There are things there that make sense to me. But then there are other things like Game of the Year, when it's so fractured and so few people liked it and so few people didn't like it. I mean, it's like, it's this really weird thing where so many people are so just divided on this game. Seeing it get that nomination is a little weird, but at the same time, other award shows have done stuff as crazy. We'll talk about this in a little second, but we're going to talk about the Oscars in a moment. And this is going to be not a gaming story, but it's something that kind of references what's sort of not going on here, which makes this kind of award show a little bit more legitimate.
Okay.
But your experience with Death Stranding, do you believe it should have gotten nominated for all the things it got nominated for?
I don't have anything really against for what it was nominated, but it's the fact that it got nominated in so many categories when there was a lot of other games that aren't getting that kind of, for example, Devil May Cry 5 by these same publications got 90 plus on Metacritic. So that tells you that a lot of the games journalist scene thought this game was fantastic, whereas Death Stranding, it got an 82 something in the 80s, which is still a good score, which supports why it should be in the Game Awards and being nominated in so many categories. But why are we seeing such a huge disconnect with a game like Death Stranding showing up everywhere and Devil May Cry 5 showing up nowhere?
Yeah, it could have
Or almost
been,
nowhere.
honestly, it could just be that the game is more current, it's more fresh in people's minds, it has more notoriety behind it. There are various things that can cause that. I'm not saying I agree with all the nominations or anything like that, because I have my own personal opinions. I watch the award show like everyone else, and I go, what? That shouldn't have won? Because it happens. Everybody does that. That's a normal thing. With the Academy Awards and the Oscars, there was a very specific point in time when Pixar didn't win awards, but DreamWorks did. And the reason why that happened was because the Academy Awards are an industry insider award show. So DreamWorks had a lot more voting people than Pixar did. That was a little bit of a rumor that happened a while ago, but things like that do happen with award shows. At least with this one, we're getting reviewers to look at these games. Now, truth of the matter, many people that reviewed the game early on are not experiencing Death Stranding the same way current gamers are experiencing it, because the way that the world evolves to connect other players together, at the very beginning of things, there just wasn't enough players there, so their experience is drastically a different game.
Yeah, and I think there is some inherent bias just in the timing of things. A game like Devil May Cry, that came out many months ago, and I'm not sure when these people voted, but I assume it's after Death Stranding came out, which means that was probably the game that was, the most recent in their memory, which right there is an inherent bias that's actually very difficult to get rid of, because you ask anyone, hey, what's your favorite thing? You're going to think back of the most recent things that you're thinking about. But that's still worth talking about as an issue. Like, how do we overcome that as an industry? How do we step it up if there is that bias? Another thing I don't agree with is the fact that you have a fantastic game like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is fantastic. I love it. And
a lot of people really like
critics
that game.
are unanimous on it. This is not a dividing game like Death Stranding. I'm hearing from most people and outlets, this is a fantastic game and it should have been a Game of the Year contender, but the cutoff date was November 15th, which is the exact same day that Jedi Fallen Order came out, as well as Pokemon. I don't know if Pokemon would have been nominated for anything, but that's another inherent problem with this Game Award. And why is it so important? I get it. They say, well, if it missed the cutoff date, it'll roll over into the next year. So we're seeing, for example, Smash Brothers being nominated for Game of the Year this year, which again, that feels off, because we celebrated the Game Awards in 2018, and everybody was part of the Smash hype at that point. So to come back a year later and let's say Smash wins Game of the Year, that's feels so disrespectful to all the games that came out in 2019. It's like, what are you doing? And also on the website, it says the cutoff is November 15th, but games that released in December will be considered for next year. So what happens to the games between November 15th and 30th? Are those just disqualified? Will Jedi Fallen Order not get the recognition it deserves?
It sucks. And I agree. I believe the award shows should happen, specifically the Game Awards, should happen right after December. It has to be right when we've experienced the entire holiday rush of games, when everyone has gotten their hands on the games. Because guess what happens during December? Holidays. So people buy things and they play things. So there's more people to have those experiences and have those thoughts. Reviewers even have time to sit there and play those games a little bit more.
And to catch up on their backlog, because it's very tough to stay on top of every game that comes out in a year. There's so many games now. So a lot of people, they take the holidays to kind of catch up on the big ones that were talked about and form an opinion on the whole year. Now, I get why Jeff did it in December, because he was starting off from nothing when he first launched this, and he needed as much support as he could. So he did in December because, hey, that's when the advertising dollars are out. People want to advertise their games or whatever, their products, for the holiday season.
That's right.
So it's like, hey, I'm doing a Game Awards. Why don't you sponsor this? And it's a lot easier for him to sell it. Whereas he goes in January and he looks for sponsorships. People are going to be like, well, nobody has money in January. We're not going to pitch. And that's why he did it. But now that the show has a reputation, has an audience, now's the time to talk about this. belongs. Look at the Oscars. When is that? January, February? It's in the new year.
It's in the new year, yeah.
So the Game Awards should shift as well and properly recognize the whole year, because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Now, look, I know a lot of people out there are criticizing Jeff Keighley, but as someone who's paid attention to the industry for as long as I have, I've known of Jeff Keighley for years and years and years. I've been watching him and reading his articles and paying attention to him because I really trust his opinions. I like his insights, and his ability to connect with developers on a level that most other industry professionals can't is something that's very important. Jeff Keighley also has one of the longest standing relationships with Valve. One of his first roles was actually interviewing Valve at a time when they were just about to release Half-Life. So he has a big background and a huge respect for the folks at Valve. A one-to-one relationship with Gabe Newell, who started Valve. When we saw the games come out from Valve recently that got voted on the Game Awards, like Dota 2. Dota 2 went up directly against Overwatch for 2018. And guess who won? Overwatch.
Of course.
It wasn't Dota 2.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the card games they released recently, that card game, it was a video game, but it was the card game that nobody really liked, nobody really enjoyed. That card game didn't even get a nomination. It could have helped Valve immensely if they got nominated on the Game Awards, but it didn't. That tells me that that Jeff is not in control of who votes for things, because he definitely would have thrown those games in there to help his friends out. And look, there is a lot of conversations to be had about how far journalists can go to being so close to their subject that it kind of muddies the waters in between and you don't know what's there. But I'm one of those people that really liked Hunter S. Thompson, who really got into the mix of things. So for me, I like seeing journalists getting in there and having those relationships and talking and sharing those stories with us later on. But the result of this, and I believe, and I know it's a hard thing to understand, folks, I believe that the Game Awards is as unbiased as it possibly can be, but unfortunately, it just doesn't look that way for many people. And I think that's what the problem is.
I think so too. And you have to think the Game Awards launched at a time when there was that whole Konami fiasco going on, and Kojima, I think, was leaving, and he wasn't allowed to go to the Game Awards. And then the following year he was allowed to go, and there was this big ruckus, and that, I think, really helped the Game Awards take off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of coming full circle now that underdog story of, Kojima left the bad overlord of Konami and built his own game. It's like, okay, it was okay to champion that, but now, Death Stranding is a controversial game.
Yeah.
What happens? It's just the optics.
When Jeff Keighley was talking about Konami originally, he made his voice very clear that he did not like Konami and what they did, because he got the backstory. He knows Kojima, so he was capable of seeing all that.
Yeah.
And for me, Jeff Keighley has always been a representative for the game developers and the fans and the community. He's those people. Jeff Keighley isn't a fan of the corporations, of the bosses, of the mechanical.
No.
He likes the people in the industry, and he fights for them. So that's something that I've seen from him from years and years.
And his passion comes through. I mean, you can see it, and everybody likes to make fun of him. And that's another thing I gotta give props to Jeff for. The guy takes criticism very well, because that wasn't. The award show was not welcome with open arms from the get-go. And he's really been just kind of taking that negative feedback and building it. So I really hope that he can take that feedback of what's going on now, of recognizing the optics of what's happening with Death Stranding and the fact that he was so involved in promoting it, and building on top of that, because I really hope that this isn't the year that the show takes a step back. Because I really like the Game Awards. I really think it represents the industry in a good light, and it helps us come together to really celebrate our industry. And I think as long as we keep building on it, it can really be something that we can stand behind.
Yeah, if you go on Twitter and you just look at what Jeff Keighley has asked in the past, he actually asks everybody that's watched the show, what didn't you like this year? What do you think could be improved? What are suggestions you think we could have to make things better? And he does that directly to us as viewers, as gamers. He doesn't have to do that, but he does that. And he's used a lot of those suggestions to make the show better. I believe he's someone you can trust. I personally believe him, and I don't think there's anything weird going on here despite the way it looks. So that's just how I see it. But folks, how do you feel? Do you think that the Game Awards correctly represent what everybody feels about the video games coming out, and which one's the best one and which one's not so great? Or do you think that, well, the Game Awards should probably really distance itself and just have some rotating host every year? But what do you feel?
Let us know.